I think on the early signs of a slowdown, early signs of shutdown or slowdown economic activity, I think the Fed is going to reverse course, and then risk assets are going to do well again. But if we're seeing inflation continue to rise, we're seeing the Fed really locking horns with inflation, trying to put it back in the Pandora box. And then I think we're going to see asset classes, including Bitcoin and gold, actually take a hit first, and then they may recover and go higher. But I think everything is going to take a hit first if tapering and the yield prices or the interest rates are going to rise. So that's why I'm saying you have to wait for at least a few more months to see which way the economy is going. So the labor monthly numbers are very important. Inflation numbers are very important. And, money printing, like you said, the Fed printed 40% of all the dollars that existed in the last 18 months. The stock market is up 40% in the last 18 months. So those numbers match for a reason. And because most of that liquidity is coming from the Fed and Treasury into financial markets and not necessarily into Main Street. I think we will have volatility, and because of volatility, if there's a lot of volatility, because, for example, inflation is out of control, double digits, then gold and Bitcoin are going to become even bigger, safe assets.
Okay.
But if we have single-digit inflation and the Fed is fighting it, then all assets are actually going to lose value because everybody is going to be hurting. And the opposite, if the Fed decides that inflation is not an issue and they can accommodate longer, then all asset prices are going to go up. So we have several scenarios here, and we have to watch very carefully what happens with each print each month and make decisions based on that.
Were you surprised at how strong the dollar has been maintained despite higher inflation, despite more money printing, and despite monetary stimulus?
I wasn't surprised because the dollar is the reserve currency of the world, and it is the best looking house in a pretty bad neighborhood, right? So if you have Turkish lira, the dollar looks amazing. If you live in Venezuela and Argentina or any of these other countries that are struggling with their local currency, converting your assets into dollars looks like a smart move. So because of that, because of the increase in risk in many fiat currencies, you're seeing mass migration to the dollar. And because of that, the dollar is strengthening, despite the fact that the United States is printing trillions of dollars. And the secret to the U.S. power, the U.S. success, is the fact that we can continue printing dollars and not have the dollar collapse, because the rest of the world, the United States is 5% of the population, but about 85% of all the transactions in the world. That is really the secret to the power of the US dollar. And the military is here to protect, the US military is here to protect the US dollar. Don't get confused with the US military protecting the US population.
Can the dollar lose its status as a world reserve currency? Can we lose the petrodollar into something like the petro-yuan or anything else? And to your point about 85% of the global trade being transacted in US dollars, is that going to last forever?
I agree that long term, we don't know if it's going to take 10, 20, or 50 years. Long term, there's going to be a decline. You cannot continue. The analogy I was saying is that the US dollar is like this golden goose that lays golden eggs. And what the United States does every year, we pluck a few feathers, we throw it out of the fifth floor and see if it can still land, right? And then we bring it back, let it lay a few eggs, pluck a few more feathers, and see if it still lands, right? So printing dollars continuously and hoping that the goose will continue laying golden eggs and throwing it out of the window by risking our entire existence by basically, putting a safety net out in the US economy, giving free money, subsidizing everything on earth, including the US military, right? Basically, the United States is living beyond its means, and we are risking the golden goose. So instead of pulling back, instead of allowing markets to go through normal cycles like a recession, we are effectively, again, the Fed is effectively maintaining that safety net under the entire US economy, creating zombie companies just like in Japan, and not allowing capital to flow freely to where it does the most good. And the opposite of that is actually what's happening in crypto markets. Capital is very efficient. The velocity of money in capital market is 20 times higher than it is in the traditional economy. So which one is the fake economy and which one is the real economy?
The velocity of money is higher in crypto markets. Does that imply that people with cryptos are spending more cryptos? What do you mean by that?
It's not that they're spending, it's the same dollar rotates 20 times faster. The velocity of stable coins is 22, and the velocity of the US dollar is 1.2. The velocity of the US dollar used to be 2.6. These are all numbers that are available from Fred, from the government reporting agencies, fred.gov, I think.
Yes.
And you can see it used to be 2.6, now it's 1.2. So the dollar lost over 50% of its velocity over the last 2 decades. At the same time, crypto assets have gone from 0 to over 20x, meaning the dollar turns 20 times faster. It creates good, right? So the same dollar is moving very slowly in traditional economy and very fast. It creates a lot of GDP very fast in crypto assets. That's why assets are moving, or dollars are moving from TradFi, traditional finance, into DeFi and CeFi.
I want to talk about some of the emerging themes or emerging trends, Web3 being one of them. Just today on the 20th of December, Jack Dorsey caused an uproar on the internet by making this statement on Twitter. Let me just read it. He said, "You don't own Web3. The VCs and their LPs do. It will never escape their incentives. It's ultimately a centralized entity with a different label. Know what you're getting into." Okay, lots to unpack there. What do you make of that statement?
Well, look, I don't think necessarily that VCs are good or bad. VCs are deployers of capital, and they usually chase opportunities where capital can do good and can return a lot on its asset. I think Jack is focusing on decentralization. He's basically saying, don't allow these centralized entities to control you. If you're an innovator, try to build these things in a decentralized way. But even if you're building in a decentralized way, you still need capital. And a lot of this capital formation, the fastest capital formation is coming from venture capital. And that's why they basically get in on many of these early stage projects. But for example, Celsius was not funded by venture capital. And I think Jack is planning to, all the stuff he's developing with Square and other projects are not going to be venture backed. So it's a combination of both. And really, this is all about the user, right? The billions of people around the world voting with their pockets for companies that are decentralized companies that are acting in your best interest, like Celsius, versus companies that just create some novelty for you, which is, again, a punk, an NFT, a DeFi project or whatever. So the question is, are you going after this short-term appreciation, or are you trying to build the future of finance?
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
Tell us about how a young entrepreneur or an engineer can raise capital in a decentralized manner today.
It's not just that there are many ways. For example, there are many different capital formation, like, for example, a DAO, distributed autonomous organization, where a bunch of people just get together and they fund this project that is autonomous, right? It's not a traditional corporation. You can do an ICO, an initial coin offering, like Celsius did. You could still go to VCs or private equity guys, but you can also basically get your community to come and back you up. Like we at Celsius, we used several rounds with the community where we explained to them what we're going to build. They funded the project, and then we delivered that utility back to the community. So the community is the main beneficiary from creating this infrastructure. But also the other side of the same coin here is the amount of code or the amount of development that you need is dramatically lower, right? So where in some of the, like Arbinet, the company I founded during the internet boom, we had to raise $350 million before we went public to fund the infrastructure build out, to build voice over IP, put nodes all over the world, and so on, so on. Today, an 18-year-old kid can write few lines of code, relying mostly on existing infrastructure, right? Forking existing work done by Uniswap or by some other protocol, adding some value to it, and create the future of finance. So the need for that massive amounts of capital just does not exist, right? So you can deliver much more with much less. And again, it comes down. Are you trying to do good first and then do well? Or are you just trying to do well?
Okay, excellent. Well, what does all this innovation mean for the crypto markets next year? We'll move on to your outlook on the crypto markets at large in 2022.
I think both the Fed and Treasury are really locked in a vice. They don't have a lot of options. They're behaving as if they're options. They're telling us, they're telegraphing us that they're going to do this or that. But the reality is that they're going to support the economy. They're going to continue to reflate. And because of that, sooner or later, both Bitcoin and gold are actually going to rip much higher because basically people will understand that they're getting taxed and then debased. And we talked about that during the debate. That's one thing I totally agree with Peter Schiff and others, that there's no question that the traditional system, TradFi, is penalizing you several times, and there's no way for you to escape that unless you detach yourself from being denominated in US dollars. So Bitcoin, I expect it to rip higher again, 140 to 160,000 next year. And I expect gold to go much higher than 2,000 and stay above those levels. When people realize that those are the real only two assets that are not connected to that, to the mothership, which is the dollar.
Bitcoin is still the coin that's being transacted the most with. The largest volume of trade is still being done with Bitcoin. Do you see that changing in the foreseeable future? Could something like USDT or USDC take over as the predominant currency of choice in the crypto space?
Well, it depends how you measure these things, right? So if you measure it by number of transaction or dollar value, but I do expect today a lot of the other projects like Ethereum, for example, are capped because of the gas fees. So the gas fees are 10 times or 100 times higher than what they should be. And the minute we solve all that next year, you're going to see an explosion in the number of transactions on Ethereum. Today, a lot of people who are trying to transact on the Ethereum blockchain have to stop themselves or try to do it later. So Bitcoin still has a dominance mainly because of all these obstacles, right? But if you look at the daily volume of Tether, you would see that the Bitcoin Tether pair plus the Ethereum Tether pair are really the two that have the most volume. And Tether does 3 times the volume or 2 times the volume of those two together. So today, if you measure in dollar terms, I think Tether would win out. But if you measure in absolute, like how many blocks or how many transactions in a block, obviously Bitcoin and Ethereum still win.
Excellent.
Do you want to know one thing about crypto? I made over 3,000% in profit in a few weeks. Fact is, the traditional financial system, the traditional money system makes you poor, not rich. If you want to earn $500,000, $1 million, you have to wait until you're 50, 60, 70 in the traditional financial system, and you probably will still be broke. And you will be old. This is not a sexy combination, as you can imagine. But the question is, how can you start in crypto and make these profits? Where to invest? Where to start? My name is Gunnar and I'm from Germany, as you can hear, and things are a little bit different in Germany. More about that later on. Fact is, there are lots of different cryptocurrencies. It's a gigantic universe where beginners and professionals get easily lost. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are 7 key steps you need to follow to become successful in this market. You have to know them, and if you fail one of them, it's literally impossible to succeed in this market. Just an example, one of the key points is your exchange, and one of the biggest are, for example, Binance and Coinbase. These are trusted and well-established exchanges, but, and this is a big but, you won't find the super profitable coins on those exchanges. The unknown super profitable coins that get gigantic profits are not traded on those kind of exchanges. They are traded on much smaller insider platforms that are barely known. And I can tell you what those super secret exchanges are and why they are so profitable. And another super important thing are the right information sources. The point is, the internet is gigantic. There are hundreds and hundreds of YouTube channels, blogs, pages, and much more. And there are also market makers and influencers. For example, Elon Musk, he is not a crypto guy, but the moment he recommended Dogecoin, it went through the roof, to the moon, so to say. But why did he recommend it? Where did he hear it from? He didn't hear it from newspapers. And believe me, he is listening to someone. But you have to know who, and you have to react before he is reacting. This is really important. And these are only 2 of the 7 steps you have to follow in order to be successful in crypto. And if you want to know all of these steps in much more detail, and if you want to have a comprehensive checklist, here's what you should do. There is a link below this video. Click on this link and you will get the opportunity to subscribe to my channel. Click on the link and you will see a video where I explain the next steps. So see you soon. Click on the link now. I'll see you there.